This video is going to show how to replace the lower bake element on a Maytag Gemini double oven.
Okay, my wife reports that the lower oven on our Maytag Gemini range does not work. Most specifically, the lower bake element doesn't work. So we're gonna debug a little bit. The model on this guy is an MER765 BAB17. I imagine some of those B's mean black, but it's about a 2010 Maytag Gemini double oven electric range. So I guess the first thing would be to do a good old visual inspection to see what's going on. Probably just easiest to get the racks out. I see it already. Yeah, it's broken. It's just broken. You know, it doesn't take an ohmmeter to figure that one out, but when we get it apart, I will put an ohmmeter on it and show the difference between a good and a bad element.
Well, Maytag makes it really easy to find the parts for just about any appliance they've ever made. Just go straight to maytag.com. Go to their manuals and documentation section, type in the model number, and up will come a list of just about any kind of user guide, repair guide, parts list that you will need. Once you get the original OEM part number from Maytag, you just punch it in at eBay, and up will come a plethora of replacement parts. Now these cheaper ones aren't the actual Maytag Whirlpool OEM replacement parts, but I don't see with a heater element where I could go wrong saving $20 or so. So I ordered the part from eBay, and in a few days it showed up, and continuing on.
Well, that 99.99% of the time that everything goes right without turning off the breaker isn't worth it to me. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the breaker just so when I'm unplugging the range that, I don't accidentally shock the crap out of myself. Alright, a person might be tempted to just, unscrew those screws and try and pull the element out and pull the wires off from the front side. I don't think it's worth it. I'm going to go ahead and pull the oven all the way out and unscrew it from the back and disconnect the wires and do it the right way. Go ahead and slide the oven out. Power's off. I don't want to take a chance on scratching the side, even though nobody can ever see it. I'm just gonna, usually there's enough clearance to get something in there to protect the range from damage. It's not worth being lazy. Alright, just gonna go ahead and slide it out. You can see that this is a fairly new plug and socket, so leaving the breaker on may not have caused any problem with this particular one, but some of the older ones, they're frayed and cracked. If they're hard plastic, this is rubberized, so we might have been all right, but I still think turning the breaker off is the best policy. Okay, now that we've taken our safety detour, we're going to go ahead and just open up this panel here. And lo and behold, we have our two wires. Unplug them. And definitely don't forget to plug those back in before you turn your power back on and everything. That would be bad. They would touch the metal and spark and blow a breaker at the minimum. Anyway, we got that part done, and now we just go to the front of the oven and undo those screws and pull it out. Okay, a person might be scared to try and take this door off, but I tell you, it's the easiest thing ever. You're gonna keep yourself from breaking the door while you're working on the element. It's just one step that is absolutely worth the time to just lift the door off. That's all there is to it. Just lift the door off. Okay, then it's just a matter of getting these two screws out of here and pulling. Don't want to get too rough with that insulation, so if it tugs a little bit, don't yank on it, but you should be able to just slide it right out of there. There you go. Now again, if those wires had been connected there, it'd be ripping that insulation up pretty good. So it's not worth it. Just pull it out, get in there from the back. Okay, so here's the old element. It's clearly broken. So we wouldn't need to measure this, but for the sake of demonstration of how to measure for a good or bad element, you disconnect the wires first. It's just easier up here on the table. Normally you would do this in place in the oven, remove the plugs, measure this. It should be, less than 50 ohms or so, probably closer to 20 ohms, but we're getting nothing. So then you might say, well, what if this were touching? Would it still show a connection? So I'm going to hold that together and try and make a measurement here. Let's see what we get. No. If it's less than 100 ohms, it's good. If it's over 100 ohms, maybe 200 ohms, it's going bad. But if it's broken, it's going to be open like that. And it's going to be flashing. It's not going to read anything. And to demonstrate with the new element, we'll guess that it's going to be less than 50 ohms, 20 or so maybe, 21.6 ohms. That's a good element. So that was the problem, and that's how you would have figured out that's the problem if it wasn't physically broken, by getting in behind the range, taking the wires off, and putting an ohm meter on those two connections. It doesn't matter which side is which. Put our new element in, and you can see that in this case the oven's fairly new and the insulation still has clear holes going through it. Sometimes when this stuff gets older, it shrinks in on itself and gets brittle, and you can't easily get these through there. You might have somebody on the other side trying to pull it through without ripping the insulation too badly. You don't want to get a lot of grease on the element, so when you're handling it, you want to handle it, with non-greasy hands, gloves, or by the stands here. In this case, sometimes this gets bent in a fashion to where it's going to lift the element off the bottom of the oven. I'll give it a little bend back just so that doesn't happen, and it'll kind of force it down. And so I say just a little bend back on the tab, and it'll just start it to leaning down. And then when we push it through, we're going to make real sure we don't push on the insulation. So there we go. Now you can see that this thing can want to rock back and forth, and you might not have to tighten these all the way down to where it's lifting up off of there. You want it tight enough where it's holding it in place, not rattling around, but I've had it where when you tighten them too tight, it just lifts the element off the ground, or off the bottom of the oven. And again, when I'm installing screws in an appliance, I don't use an electric screw gun or drill. I'll reserve that for tearing it apart. it's just not worth stripping it out. So you can see it's already lifting the element off the ground a little. And the tighter I get, probably the more it's going to tweak on that. But in the end, it's going to straighten out. So I'm actually just going to loosen this one up a spell. That'll be fine. And then gravity will take over eventually and pull this down. Okay, now that we got the element in, time to install the door. Just slides on there. Nothing too difficult about it. There we go. Door's on. Okay, it's time to hook the wires back up. We got the element bolted in from the inside. And we're going to give it a little push onto that tab, and this just slips onto the other tab. Does not matter which one is which, and that's all good to go. Time to put the cover on. Don't forget the insulator. I like to start the screw through there first. Then there's this little tab here, and it fits inside the slot. And then pop that down there like that, and then put your cover in. But if you forget that insulator, bad things could happen, so I wouldn't not take it off and put it back on if you realize you left it off. You pulled your range out and you didn't have an anti-tip bracket on the floor to keep it from tipping over. It's really easy to get one. They're like $5. Maytag and Whirlpool are the same, so each brand kind of has their bracket, but you need one. And if you don't have the instructions that show you exactly where to mount it, you can go to the Maytag site and get it online, or really you can just kind of put it in there on the foot. And then you can see that it wants to go right up against the wall and about an inch in from the end, because if you got a little space between your wall and your range, if you don't, you know, it's like 15/16 or something, but about an inch from the wall. So we're just going to mount it in the corner up against the wall, about an inch away from the side. Okay, it was a little tight to get in there with the camera and show while I was doing the job, but those screws are going to hold that plenty in place. That's going to hold Grandpa up. You know, I can fall on the stove. It ain't coming up. It's a little further than an inch from the wall, and the reason is I noticed when I was down here that I can't get it up against the wall because they have it centered from side to side in about a ½ inch on each side. So I took it out to 1.5 inches. So the edge of the bracket is 1.5 inches from the wall. Hope it slides in there good. We'll find out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and slide the range in and hope it catches the anti-tip bracket. I don't want to have to pull that out again, but I will if I have to. Alright, I think it's in place. We're going to give it a rock. It ain't going nowhere. Alright, we got it. Okay, let's turn the range back on. Hey, it didn't pop, so I didn't blow anything up, I guess. The clock came on, that must mean it works, right? Well, we don't know. Anyway, let's fire up the oven and see what happens. We know the broil element worked, so we're going to bake on the upper oven, and then we'll take it up to 425, 430, and see if it actually gets there. Time lapse. Heating up. So I assume everything's going to be just fine. You can kind of see the dark points right where it broke. You know, it doesn't get, but that's where it always goes bad.
Okay, I think this was a pretty simple repair, 20 bucks or so, an hour or so of labor. Everything seems to be working just fine. As you can see, it's heating up and all set to cook turkeys, I suppose. Anyway, I think anybody could do this job. Not even sure I needed to do the video for you to understand how to do it, but just in case there's one little tidbit out there that helps you out, I did my job. So until next time, happy trails to you.